Hey guys, this is Josh here with Trillium Wild Edibles, and today what I thought we'd do is take a short little walk through the woods that I have next to my house and see what plants and mushrooms that we can possibly find. Oh man. Oh yeah. Is all of these little burrs stuck to your clothes. Thankfully they remove very easily. As you can see, you can just brush them off. This is a good sign because it means the mushroom hasn't spored out yet. So let's go take a look and see what we find, shall we? Right here we can see some Virginia Knotweed with its very elongated spike of white flowers, and each one of them has a little curved spike at the end of each one of the flowers, just like we can see right there on this one. Now a lot of other plants in the area that we're seeing right now is Canadian or black Sanicle, and we've also got some white snakeroot, plus some various rose briars growing in like this guy right here. We also have some wild blue lettuce growing in just right inside the wood line. And one thing I also have a whole lot of in these woods is Spicebush. This is an amazing plant. I absolutely love the smell and the taste of this plant. I generally will use this plant somewhat as a nibble, just by grabbing a end of the branch off, just like that. Any extra leaves that want to fall off, that's fine. And then at that point, what I really love to do with Spicebush is just put it in my mouth. Oh man. Oh yeah. It's extremely refreshing whenever you nibble on it. If you're not used to it, you might experience a touch of bitterness, especially depending on where the Spicebush is actually growing. However, it does make an extremely refreshing trail nibble. It also makes a really good chew stick to kind of help clean those crevices in between the teeth, and also tastes good. Spicebush's scientific name is Lindera benzoin, and it does contain benzoin, which is a medical compound. And it's a very good astringent, and it also has a lot of good medical uses. So this can be extremely good for the teeth and the gums because of this benzoin compound that it does contain. Now you guys might remember that black or Canadian Sanicle that I mentioned earlier. I have done an identification video on it, but another interesting thing about this plant that you're going to notice whenever you're walking through moist woodlands is all of these little burrs stuck to your clothes. Thankfully they remove very easily. As you can see, you can just brush them off. But this can also be a really good sign that you're surrounded by a bunch of Canadian or black Sanicle. So that's something you guys might want to keep in mind if you want to use this plant. Now this plant right here is the black or Canadian Sanicle. And like I said, I have done an identification video on it. If you guys are interested, you guys can go ahead and check that out in my wild plant identification playlist that I have. This plant is extremely prolific in moist woodlands. It's a very good astringent, and this plant is awesome for cuts and wounds. It's also very good for a numbing or a cooling sort of sensation. As you can see, it has these very distinct shapes of these leaves with 5 leaflets coming out around the stem. Right here, this is extremely cool. Here we have a species of fern. I'm not very aware on a lot of species of fern and their identification processes, so I have no idea what this is. Some of you guys watching this might be able to give some tips or opinions on what this might be. If so, please leave it down in the comments below because this is extremely cool. Let's see if we can get any spores by tapping it. Okay, I'm not seeing any spores coming off of this, so I don't presume that it's in its sporing or flowering stage. Again, I'm not too sure on ferns, but this is really cool to see. This very beautiful spike of flower or pollen producers that we have here on this fern. Alright, now we've approached the hill here in these woods. There isn't very much in the oak and beech forest here, surprisingly. It's just rather cleared out. Usually I find a lot of lobelia and flata within oak forests. However, I'm presuming this isn't matured enough to have a lot of lobelia and flata. So we're going to go down into a swampland now and see what else we can find. Okay, now that is really awesome. There's a feather from some kind of bird. I don't know exactly what bird this is from, but I always love seeing feathers out here just because they add a lot of nutrients to the soil. Plus, if you're in a good area where you can find a whole lot of feathers like this, you can also make a whole lot of different crafts as well. Okay, now we are entering the swampland, going down the hill into the creek. Little small drainage runoff creek that it is. Mosquitoes are going to be horrendous. Should see some good deer sign down here. We'll see. Uh-oh. Right there is an extremely awesome deer footprint right there in the ground. So this tells me that there are a lot of deer coming through here. And this is something that you want to be aware of if you have your own property and you're looking out for wild edibles, because wild game, squirrel, deer, rabbits, etc. are wild edibles. They're wild and they're edible, and they're also extremely delicious. I'm sure you guys can see that very bright fluorescent orange right there. That looks like chicken of the woods growing on an old log stump. Let's go check this out. Okay, now this is extremely awesome. Here we have a chicken of the woods specimen. This may not be the actual true sulphur shelf. And the reason I say that is because we have to investigate the underside. The true sulphur shelf or chicken of the woods mushroom has a yellow underside. It does have lookalikes that are still edible. They're just not nearly as palatable as true chicken of the woods or true sulphur shelf. So let's take a look at the underside of this mushroom, shall we? If we look back off over here, there's a piece that's broken off already, so we don't have to even damage this mushroom. If we look at the underside, we're going to notice that it's very, very bright yellow. As we can see here, it looks like the mineral sulfur would look. This is also a polypore mushroom, and these pores are very tightly close together. This is a good sign because it means the mushroom hasn't spored out yet. The later the mushroom is, after a mushroom is spored out, it generally doesn't taste as good. They're usually still palatable and edible, however, they generally don't taste as fresh. I thank all of you guys for watching this video. I thank you all for commenting and subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. If you want to learn more about wild edibles or medicinal plants, please make sure to subscribe.